All right, welcome everyone to Frank Analysis. I'm your host Franco. I'm happy to be joined today by Charles Anderson of the Lone Wolf Podcast and Tom Coffey of Coffee and Nuance. Both are returning to the show. We're all former Tulsi supporters. It's great. It's great to have you guys on. But yeah, go ahead, introduce yourselves. I picked up a couple of new people who just subscribed to the show. There may be some new people watching also. So we'll start with you, Charles. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Charles Anderson. I'm from Spartanburg, South Carolina, host of the Lone Wolf podcast. You can now find the show on YouTube, Daily Motion, Odyssey, and Rumble. You can also find me over on Twitter at Vigilant into P1. One of the things I've been kind of mostly focusing on over on my channel, I do things like the Unity through music segment. I'm blue collar guy, and what I've been noticed is people on the right and the left have a lot more in common than anyone in the mainstream media wants people to believe. And I believe for us to achieve any hope of unseating people like Democrats and Republicans, you're going to have to find a way to get that unity and focus on the issues that make the middle of America tick. So that's what my channel is mostly about. I hope you'll come check it out.
Yeah, we also have Tom Coffey, who also has a great channel called Coffee and Nuance. What's up, Tom? You can go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Hey, everybody! I'm so glad to be back with you, Franco. This is great. My name's Tom Coffey. I live out here in Portland, Oregon, in the belly of the beast. My channel is called Coffee and Nuance. That's it on every social media platform, all the video sites. You can find me there, and I just make videos about things I find interesting. And so a lot of times it'll be something that's in the news. On Fridays, I do a fact checking video every week where I take fact checkers to task and the state of that. And another thing I do that's, I think, kind of fun is on Wednesdays, I just talk about a big idea, something that's not political. And it's just like a psychology, something going on in pop psychology, just a different way to look at the world. And that's just a break from politics. And then the other days I talk about political stuff. But yeah, here I am in the center of Portlandia, you know.
Man, it's crazy how a lot of former Tulsi supporters have taken different paths. But I don't know about you guys, but I see a lot of people who, especially like some people who still support Bernie Sanders, who still use the term Tulsel, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't support any politician anymore. Tulsi is out of office. Like she doesn't hold any political position right now. Why are you still using this term? I don't know if you guys still experience this. Do you guys?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Not thrown my way that much, but I still see it tossed around a lot.
It's just like anything that just does not sit with the norm of, I don't know, progressive leftists. You're just termed like a toll cell. Like if you have any political views that don't exactly align with what popular progressive media aligns with, it's just you just throw the word toll cell. Have you been called that, Tom?
Never heard the term,
Oh
but
my God, you're lucky.
I I tell you what, it's it's really weird where I'm at. And a lot of times I just choose not to talk politics at all uh, out in public. It's different than where you guys are at. We're still all masked up and, can't go to restaurants. And, this is the most shut down place in the country. It's
Yeah.
really sad. So it's not like all the bars are still closed and everything. It's kind of insane. Uh, but yeah, I can't even I can't even talk politics with a lot of people in this town because I think it's kind of the uber crazy. Um, so I just kind of avoid it with that. You got to suss people out a little bit.
Yeah. It's crazy to me though, like how much diversity she was able to pick up. Like this isn't one of our main topics today, but I just thought like it could be a good warm up here to talk about like what could it have been that attracted so many diverse ideologies to support someone like Tulsi Gabbard? Was it her um what was it her message on foreign policy? Like could this be the key to try to unite more people is to expose what the US does with our foreign policy?
I mean, I would say it's got a little to do with that, but a few other things as well. I think I've made this point too about Donald Trump, and before Donald Trump, in a lot of cases, it was Ron Paul. Um, People were looking for something different. Okay, we'd been hearing the stuff thrown at us between the Bushes and the Clintons for years and years, and you get someone like Ross Perot in '92, Ron Paul '08, 2012, Donald Trump 2016. They're calling out basically both sides. Okay. So you had Tulsi Gabbard, who's calling out all the foreign policy stuff. She's also calling out Hillary Clinton. She was taking the punches in both directions. And, some would say Bernie did that in 2016, but the problem was he wound up just kind of kowtowing right toward the end, and he turned a lot of people off, I believe. Those people that couldn't trust Bernie this time around went looking for other alternatives, and a lot of them ended up in Tulsi's camp. Some of them ended up in Marianne Williamson's camp. Some even went to Andrew Yang. But I think it was just that it felt genuine. It felt like she wasn't playing party politics, and they were looking for that outsider.
Yeah, what do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I think she seemed real,
Yeah.
And she was speaking truth to power. And I got to be honest, I don't know any politician right now in any party that's really doing that I can stand behind. I'm just not aware of any. I can't even think of, like, on the Democratic side, I can't even think of the last time someone made a stance on something that I was like, yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. It's like I don't recognize anything anymore. One of the things, like, why I got this silly tiki set and this, the Hawaiian shirts and everything, that I've always been a fan of it, and I've always had Hawaiian shirts and whatnot, but it was kind of Tulsi, being from Hawaii, and I was just like, oh, I can rock a Hawaiian shirt kind of in support. This was pre Boogaloo,
Mm-hmm.
To just kind of backhanded or very subtle support for Tulsi when she kicked off. And I've just kind of kept it because I like it and it's fun and silly. I don't know.
Theme to your channel.
Yeah, but it's also I don't know. Everybody's got a bookcase, and it's kind of lame. I read books too, but I'm not gonna display them behind me, as some kind of evidence that I'm, that I can read.
Believe me, I read. Look at all these books behind me.
I
look at them all.
You for that theme, as you can see.
Yeah, I see people like Kamala Harris do that, but it doesn't seem like she reads that much at all. It seems like she just does it for show. Like, I see a lot of people that do that. That it seems like it doesn't mean that you're open minded. It just means that you read a lot of one topic, or you probably are just doing that for show. Thomas Oklahoma makes a great point. He said Tulsi didn't have to play identity politics to win over millions of people of color. All she had to do was advocate for class and civil rights reform. She's anti-establishment, which won over some of the left and right. Definitely anti-establishment. And she was also one of the few politicians that stood up for Julian Assange, that made civil liberties a focus, talked about our election integrity system. She's the last politician that I ever really supported like that, just like you, Tom. Like, I can't see anyone who's in office right now who I can really get behind, and I don't really think that we can solve our problems by voting our way out of it anymore. I don't know if you guys also stand that in that way, Charles. I know that you really support third parties. I support third parties, like, in theory. Like, I support them more than I support the two main puppets of the predator class, but I think that our focus should be more on public action. I don't know about you guys.
I mean, I'll say this: I'm advocating for the third parties, but am I sold that it's gonna fix the problem at this point? No. I say we should at least be trying, because I haven't seen a true independent third party, grassroots thing be able to come together, because they haven't focused on the right message. They always hit a little on the good stuff and a little bit of the bad stuff. Like the libertarians, okay, we want out of war. We want to, end the war on drugs. We're for criminal justice reform. But then we think that, all this what the left would deem crazy tax policy stuff. We want that, complete unchecked capitalism. On the Green Party side, they're leaning more into socialism. When you start to dilute the waters, you start losing people on your sides. And that's why I've made the case, put certain things on the back burner. But if we can't do this, then the only other alternative is going to be, as you put it, the people taking action. The only thing why I don't go straight to that is because I kind of got a good idea when that happens, things are going to get pretty ugly, because that's the only way revolution never takes place.
Tom, what are your thoughts, man?
I'm not for revolution. Okay. I don't, in theory, I am. I don't want it to happen during my lifetime. I don't want to have to, I think it's pretty ugly to go through that. One thing is that being in Portland, I've been in Portland like 20 years now. I've seen a lot of direct action, and it's, you got to be able to differentiate between different actions. And we got some pretty insane action going on here. And it's kind of set up that, I don't know, I think most people are blind to what's happening. And, you're either all for it or all against it. And there's no nuance, if you will, no looking into any of what the action is. One of the fun action things that I liked when I moved here 20 years ago is on one Friday a month, they would do the critical mass bike ride through downtown, where they'd kind of not really block traffic. They'd keep moving, but you'd have a pack of a couple hundred bikes just taking over a street and then driving, just letting people know, hey, bikes are part of society as well. And I liked that kind of thing. I'm not into firebombing places and destroying things. I think that's kind of pretty awful. But I think one thing, when people are feeling hopeless and about the future, one of the things is to really take care of yourself first, and then try to change your neighborhood, try to change your community, try to change your country. But be sure you focus on yourself and your family first. And that's going to help you out a great deal. Because if you're more financially stable or more, healthier, if you're taking care of your health and working out and eating well, and that's a big difference. You can really help change things much more if you focus on that.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't keeping themselves too self-aware. They're letting their subconscious drive them too much, and that's something that really needs to be taken into consideration if there ever were a revolution. Is the leaders, they need to be kept in check. We need to be kept in check that their mental health is okay, that they're not insane. Otherwise, it could lead us down like a self-destructive path. So yeah, I'm with you, Tom. Like we need, a lot of people do need to focus on themselves, their mental health, their family. I want to ask, I'm curious, like what are your thoughts on seeing people though, like opting out of the system, like not buying from corporately owned food products anymore. Like if people start growing their own food, or they start organizing within their communities and not relying too much on the system, but yeah, just forming their own system within their communities, and also trading with like other communities that are like nearby. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. That's the kind of thing that can have a much bigger impact than, I don't know, tweeting or doing an online petition or, things like that. One thing here in Portland, we got like the Portland fruit project or fruit tree project. I forget the name of it, but online they have a thing where people with different fruit trees can then say when their trees are in season, and you can go out and pick their fruit. So it's a way to share in the community. And I think it's really awesome because we got a lot of great fruit here in Oregon. But to be able to go like, oh, in this town, they've got blueberries, and they got this whole field, and you can just go and get what you want. Those kinds of projects are great for building a community, getting around other people. It's just really, yeah, that's an awesome thing to do. As far as like mental health and physical health and all that, I'm a fitness instructor. That's what I do every day. And finally, a week ago, I was allowed to start teaching again. So I'm teaching out in the park, fitness classes every morning, and I'm bipolar. And what I've found is that every day that I work out and have exercise, it just keeps me clear-headed, so much better. And I think that, just being able to form these communities around whatever it happens to be, but opting out of the American system in large. I gave up McDonald's and Walmart in 1994.
Dang.
And I haven't been to either of them since. Like that was a New Year's resolution. I just needed to come up with something. So I opted out of that, and I survived, and I'm okay. Can I opt out of Amazon? That's a tough one. But I do try to buy local, and I pretty much just eat whole foods and not processed foods and things like that. But nice. Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, real quick before I get to you, Charles, I just want to address this. Anthony Reyes, and he talk about Israel. I'm really lost what happened there as of late. Yeah, I'm working on a video on that. I'm gonna make solo videos on what's going on in Israel, Palestine, and on Colombia. And if they're not solo videos, then they're going to be discussed in a panel discussion that I have coming up later this week. But yeah, Charles, what are your thoughts on, how we can opt out of the system?
Yeah, so I'm actually really in favor of it. And that's, kind of something I've heard the case for Gene Epstein's made a lot. If you ever watch any of those Soho forums, when he was debating Richard Wolff and a few others, he's actually talked about how, you've got choice on where you want to buy your goods from. If you want to protest the system, that's part of the things you can do is not buy from the people that you say are so bad and you don't support. The only, I guess, counter argument to that is in the case of, what I heard Tom mentioning with like Walmart and Amazon, is the fact that they got so much business already over time and became so large that it's put a lot of the smaller chains out. And so let's say you're limited on how far you can travel to buy something. You're limited on how much money you can spend or something. They've been able to corner the market so well, and they've got access to so many products that it then becomes hard for some people to try to shop at alternatives. That's the only issue I see with that argument, though. But if you've got the means to buy local, you can afford to travel maybe a little farther to buy local and support your community better and do basically protests of these massive chains like Tom pointed out, McDonald's, Amazon, or Walmart, or any of these, big massive malls or whatever. I mean, some of these chains, though, I'll be honest, are facing going belly up anyway. And so, maybe, Ingles might be a better alternative. But if you've also got an actual local produce owner, so he grows his stuff, locally or whatever. And if you got these things like what we call flea markets in the South, where it's like homegrown vegetables in a lot of these cases. And I mean, I'll be honest, they're bigger than the stuff you can get in the store. Support your local, because that takes care of your community, and you're not putting more money in a billionaire's pocket. And if enough people do it, that'll send a strong message.
Right on. Yeah.
And just to add on to that, again, it's taking care of yourself. So if you can do something to maybe, if you make a little bit more money, then you're able to do that. Right. I don't fault anybody that's broke going to Walmart or, big chains if they're living hand to mouth, right. I understand that. But if you can do something, find out a way that you have a little bit more money, then you can live those values of being more independent.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, you may be saving more money in the long run, because then you look at all the stuff that they put in our foods by these like big chain uh fast food fast food places like McDonald's or um uh other things that they sell like at like what Target, Walmart, like they adulterate the food so much that over time you're accumulating all these harmful products that they have there in the ingredients that you can develop diseases, and then your medical bills are going to be really expensive. So yeah, there's ways that you can opt out of the system, that you can help with your community. Check out Derek Brose's Freedom Cells. I'm sure there's other people that have similar ideas to that, but yeah, that just as long as you realize that you got to take some kind of action, whether it be like this, because we got to stop relying on these politicians. Like we have Bernie Sanders out here who's still giving excuses for Joe Biden. All these progressives that we thought were going to save us, Jayapal giving Joe Biden an A, and even some independent media outlets out there, some of the big ones are still making, they're not as critical towards Biden as they were towards Trump, and that's unacceptable. Because I don't see anything that changed that much from Biden to Trump. So we're gonna talk about like the mainstream coverage of Joe Biden, how it's been not as negative as it was under Trump, and it's significantly not as negative. And Tom covered this on his channel, but we're gonna talk about this more here in depth. So let me share this real quick. There's a study that was done by Pew Research Center. It said at the 100-day mark, coverage of Joe Biden has been slightly more negative than positive, vary greatly by outlet types. I mean, we're still in all these wars. We haven't had our $2,000 checks. Like people are still suffering right now, and there's not enough negative coverage on Joe Biden, and it's making people think that our problems were solved because there's not enough negative coverage. Like a lot of people believe that we defeated fascism because we don't have Donald Trump anymore in office. So look at this. This is showing like how much positive coverage versus neither positive or negative coverage that Joe Biden is having. Now compare that to Donald Trump here. We had 11% positive coverage overall by all outlets, including right leaning, left leaning, and the more independent leaning. 45% neither, and 44% negative assessment. For Joe Biden's 32% negative assessment, 45% neither, and 23% positive assessment. And here's a quote from the study. It says, another stark difference in the early coverage of the Biden and Trump administrations was in how stories were framed. About 2/3 of Biden's stories, 65%, were framed around ideology and agenda, while about 1/3, 35%, focused on leadership and character. With Trump, the numbers were roughly reversed, with 74% framed around leadership and character, and 26% around policy and ideology. Guys, do you think it's fair how mainstream coverage of Joe Biden is kind of reversed from how it was with Donald Trump? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I expected it. Just being honest with you, I don't think it's fair, but I completely expected it. And I guess that this is where kind of the right and the conservatives have it a little more accurate. Every time, it doesn't matter who a Republican holds the presidency, the mainstream media will go after him. I mean, and rightfully so in the case of someone like George Bush. I'm not saying they were wrong for going after George Bush, absolutely. And they had justification for Trump to some degree, but they went after Bush. But how much did they really go after Obama? It's not like Obama had no problems during his presidency either. I mean, he had plenty of his own issues. So that's why I found it hilarious when Trump took office, and you had people like Biden and Obama saying like, we never had these kind of scandals. Like, really? Yeah, you did. They just weren't covered the same way. Trump, to me, even though I think when he took office, he still kind of played ball for the establishment, and he took care of what they wanted for the most part. He represented that there was this grassroots movement to get something to shake up the system. And the fact he would possibly even call out members of his own party, he represented a threat to the establishment. The fact that Jeb Bush couldn't win, and Donald Trump came in and cleared the House with everyone else, put a fear in them. The Democrats saw that as, we've got to stop the people like Bernie or Tulsi or whoever on our side of the aisle. Likewise, on the right, you had the people like Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, the Lindsey Graham type, who were getting scared, crapless over here that they're going to be next to go, and someone like Trump might come take their office. So that's the big reason that they had to just smear the crap out of him this entire time, because he made too much of a threat to them. And they're the ones who really control all the power in the two parties at the end of the day.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom. What do you think?
Okay, a couple things. First, quick little story about Pew, where you got this poll from. So my mom did Pew research stuff for, I think, about 12 years. She's old, she's retired, and they would call her every week to do these Pew research studies. And I mean, a couple times a week, and she would go through and do it because it was fun for her, because, she's retired. What else is she going to do, right? And as soon as she was answering that she was for Tulsi in the primary, the second time that she did that, that was the last time Pew Research called her. Now,
I remember that. I remember they would play games like that.
Take that for what it's worth. I mean, I'm not, I can't prove anything there, but I find it very interesting that they had somebody reliable. Oh, oh, hell. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure what happened. Can you see me?
Let me check. Let me pull that back up.
Just see a picture.
See a picture of you. We still hear you, though.
Let me just see if this. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, I'll figure out my camera in just a second. But yeah, some research that I saw, some different numbers. I think Joe Biden had actually less negative coverage in his first 60 days than Biden did. Than Obama did. And that's really incredible, because when Obama took office, that was really, there was so much hope in the country with these things. And for Biden to actually get less negative attention than Obama did, really just tells you what the system is doing for him. Anyway, give me a second. Let me figure out what's going on with my camera.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I remember that in the study. They out of like the past 5 presidents, starting with Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden has the most positive coverage by a significant amount. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but I'm gonna have the study linked in the description here. But why do you think they're doing this, Charles? Are they trying to manufacture people's consent into thinking that everything is fine now? Because that was the main thing to do during the Trump presidency. It was like, oh my God, look at this maniac that we have in office now.
Yeah, no, that's personally, I think that's exactly what it is. I mean, as bad as George Bush was, he was still representing what the establishment wanted. I mean, the establishment wanted war in Iraq. Okay, so you see how mainstream media is trying to go against one of the good things Biden has promised to do, at least. Now we'll see what he actually does, but if he does pull out in Afghanistan, I say at least better late than never. Okay, I'd prefer he went ahead and did it now, but if he at least follows through and does it later on, great. Well, you see how they're attacking him on that, at least. But that's one of the few areas. And so as bad as George Bush was, there's a reason he's been rehabilitated and he goes on Ellen and stuff now. And it's because, quite simply, if it comes down to Democrat or a Republican, the mainstream media, except for maybe Fox News, wants to prop up the Democrat. But then when you actually look at what's going on, in the Republican side, they'd far rather prop up Marco Rubio's, Jeb Bush's, as opposed to the Donald Trump type or Ron Paul or whatever. They don't want that outsider. And because they actually slipped up, I think they truly believe Trump couldn't win. Okay. And they thought, oh, we'll just show everyone what kind of a moron this guy is, what kind of a loudmouth buffoon he is. Surely he'll have no chance of winning. Well, then he won the primary. They're like, okay, well, we'll expose him on this and that. There's no way he's going to beat the Clinton dynasty. And then he did. And then they're like, okay, what the hell? So now they've got to really make Joe Biden look great. They can't try to be more fair because they want people to think, no, see how bad you fucked up with Trump. You got to reel it back in. This is how great everything is. Let's just get back to normal. And so I'll say this just real quick. You said this when we started the segment. Nothing really changed from Trump to Biden. And I'll just be honest with you. I've noticed three real changes, okay? We went from a crazy guy that has R after his name to a crazy guy that has a D after his name. Is change number one. Change number two, gas prices went up. The cost of livings continued to grow up. And change number three is the censorship has gone up.
So not anything positive.
No.
Right? So Tom, do you agree? Like, why do you think that Biden deserves more negative coverage?
Because he's garbage. It's funny. I could not have predicted that Biden would even get the nomination. I was so stunned by that. I thought of all the candidates, really, I had him at the bottom. I could have seen Kamala. I could have seen Elizabeth Warren. I could have seen Bernie before Biden. Like, I just could not see this man. And I have a hard time talking about it because I feel like it's, I don't know, elder abuse or something. Like, it's just not right.
I know what you mean.
to talk about him, because I don't think he reminds me of my grandfather, Fred, right? Fred grew up in Montana. He rode a horse. He worked on the railroad, but he rode a horse to school, right? And he had, cowboy boots, and he wore a Stetson, until he died at 100, right? And he would say crazy shit all the time, and he would repeat these stories. And it really reminds me of Biden, that Biden does the same thing. Like, he's telling these stories like he's at the bar or at the, at the VA or something. And he's repeating these fun stories from back in the day. And he doesn't realize we can actually Google it. We can see if what he's saying is true or not. And it's not true. He's just talking out his ass. But the difference is, one of the differences with Trump and Biden, like even with fact checking, would be Trump would exaggerate everything. Every time he talked, he would big up everything, and the media would act like he was being literal with that all the time. Yeah. He'd exaggerate something. Hey, yeah, the wall, and we're going to build it 10 feet higher. And I swear they'd have a fact check.
Yeah.
The wall is not going to be 10 feet higher. And it's like, yeah, we know that was like a joke, but they would fact check that and just say, oh, this is not, and Mexico's going to pay for it. There's no evidence that Mexico will pay for the wall, and Biden does the same thing. And they just go, oh, it's okay. He's just, that's just the way he is. Oh, he's just talking. And the difference between the two, the difference in the coverage between the two is just insane, and I really do have a hard time beating up on Biden, because I feel bad, because I don't think that he's really all there. I think that we should have a maximum age for president.
Oh yeah.
To be honest, sure. I think we should cap it, but
there's a minimum already. So yeah, I support a maximum, but I gotta say, Tom, you've unfortunately made me a little scary about what my future when I become an old man looks like, because I'm not sporting one in this video, but I'm known to wear the Stetsons as well and the cowboy boots. So.
Oh, I got two Stetsons right over here. I went to college in Texas, so
okay.
Yeah. And I got a pair of Justin's, in Fort Worth, Texas, from the factory. So
wow.
that I bought in the 90s, and I still I still wear them, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, you can see like in Biden, like you made a video recently, Tom, where Biden was getting a story completely wrong. There was no way that the story could have been accurate because the people he was mentioning were not in the job that he was describing since like the 90s. Like people have been long retired, or people had been, I think, in some cases dead. And yeah, like these fact checking websites that were on Trump's ass don't come after Joe Biden as much. Like Trump would say, well, like the mainstream media would say that he'd give a lot of medical misinformation, but what about when Joe Biden gives medical misinformation?
Doesn't mean
why
it.
don't you cite what they should focus on what the scientific literature says and be like, yeah, I mean, the president will just say stuff, but here are the actual experts who will listen to, or here, like, look at this evidence for yourself, and here it is. I don't know.
Well, here, you went through a good list of stuff there, but I'll just be honest. If you want to sum it all up in one thing, it's the fact that how often was Trump attacked for being a racist? I mean, for practically 4 whole years, he was a racist. That was anyone who had Trump derangement syndrome. Whenever you asked what were the problems with Trump, being racist and prejudiced were right there, pretty close to the top of the list, probably. Okay. That was definitely one of the reasons. If you'd ask anyone why they didn't like him, most probably 95% would say that. Now, early on in the primaries, Joe Biden was hit by people like Kamala Harris for some of his past decisions and things like that. But if you really want to see how much they're covering for him, I know what the argument's going to be. They're going to say he wasn't trying to say this and he just had a slip of the tongue and it came out wrong. But Joe Biden has dropped the N-word since he's been president. He slipped up in an online meeting. And if you want to check him out, I mean, you probably won't agree with a lot of stuff they say, especially if you're on the left wing. But the conservative twins, I know, actually put a video up of it. And he slips up. He's trying to get words out of his mouth. So this is the old age thing. This is what Tom was talking about. You feel like you're beating up on the elderly, but he was trying to get something out of his mouth. And the N-word's what came out. Okay. But if that had been Donald Trump, what would have been done about that? Mainstream media didn't repeat one snippet of that or say he stumbled up and said this. That was kept hush hush because I will admit it was a mistake. I don't think he was trying to say that. But if it had been Trump who made that slip up, I mean, good Lord, we had things like water bottle gate for Donald Trump, the way he would drink a water. Okay. So if he had said that during a video or whatever, mainstream media would have been all over that about, see, his inner racism towards black people are coming out. It might have been a mistake, but your brain making that mistake says you probably use that word a lot more. So what does that mean? But they won't do that for Biden. And I think that just sums it all up in a nutshell.
Yeah, you can follow up, Tom. What do you think?
I got to look up that video because that sounds
yeah,
that sounds interesting.
That sounds wild.
Yeah, I'll shoot you guys a link to it after it's done for sure.
No, that'd be dope. I don't think that I don't care if Trump and Biden are covered equally. I don't care. I would just like there to be some pushback on Biden.
Yeah.
Something, and let's go after some substance. Let's just look at what he's doing, what he said he would do, and what he's not doing. Like I say, I don't think a whole lot of stuff has changed. I don't think it would be that much different today if Trump were president. I don't think it would be. I think we'd be in the same amount of wars that we're in now. I think we'd probably have some more stimulus to the people than we got. So I think we probably have less under Biden than we'd have under Trump. But I don't see a whole lot of things being different, other than the late night talk show hosts and the entire media going nuts every night. That would have been elevated. But other than that, I don't know. Do you see any difference?
No. If anything, they should be attacking Biden even worse because Trump would expose himself. I mean, we knew this guy was a clown. We knew that he exaggerated his stories. But now, yeah, Biden isn't keeping the promises that he said he would keep, like with giving people the $2,000 checks. With I like I don't understand why anybody was giving him the benefit of the doubt when he said that he was going to pull troops out of Afghanistan. Trump said the same thing. I mean, he even tried to pull troops out, but then if Biden was serious about pulling troops out of Afghanistan, why didn't he just like continue what Trump was trying to do when he was starting to pull troops out and just like pull them all out?
Right.
Because he doesn't really mean it, and he has 40 years in politics to show that. And just look at who pays for him. Look at his donor list. That'll tell you why he is for all these wars, and he's always been for wars. He would shame people when they wouldn't be for the Iraq War or the Afghanistan War back in the early 2000s. Yeah. And I don't understand. And we have to criticize our peers here, people in independent media, like people like Kyle Kalinske, people like Chris. This is an independent media, but a lot of people who watch independent media watch The Hills, The Rising, and Crystal Ball is not criticizing Biden. She's like, oh yeah, this is great. Look, he's challenging authority. No, he's not. He's not. He's always been a puppet for authority. Why would you ever give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he's going to pull troops, that he might pull troops out of Afghanistan just because he's saying the right thing? Every president is going to give some kind of lip service during their career. And that's what I see it being. And that's what 40 years of him being in political office shows, that that's all he would do is just give lip service. And that's what his whole campaign was, is giving lip service. I don't buy for 1 second that he's going to pull troops out of Afghanistan. He's going to make up some kind of excuse for why we should stay. But yeah, go ahead, guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll say this real quick. When I was talking earlier about if he does pull them out, I don't know that he's going to either. And I'm not really convinced. I've said the whole time, I don't trust Biden as far as I can throw my house. Okay. And I got news for you. I won't make my house even budge. So I don't trust Biden at all. Okay. But, and I'm completely with you. I wouldn't be one bit surprised if 2 weeks before we were supposed to start moving the troops, there's some attack that, looks like we got unfinished business here, guys. Got to stay on, got to finish the job. So I don't expect him to. I just simply say if he does follow through, wonderful. But I'm not setting that bar of hope very, very much higher than the floor.
Oh, no, okay? I knew what you meant, man.
Yeah. But another thing I gotta push back on you now, Franco. Joe Biden honored his $2,000 pledge. He's even sent out a letter and told everyone he has. Have you gotten that letter in the mail yet? Yeah, it's from the Treasury Department or whatever, and it's basically saying that we want to make sure you've collected your $1,400.
Oh no, yeah, I saw that. Yeah, they're trying to lie to us and be like, it's 1,400 plus the 600.
He put it specifically in the wording. When you take that and add the $300 from December, we have fulfilled our promise of $2,000. It's in his own letter. They how stupid do they think we are?
Unbelievable. Tom, what do you think?
I don't know. Yeah, I wish that it's funny. You mentioned the rising. The Hills Rising, Crystal Ball. It's got to be so great to have a platform that gets promoted by YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Because it totally gets promoted, because I know friends that do not follow politics at all. And they're like, hey, have you heard of The Rising? They seem pretty good, And I'm like, well, how did you hear about them? And I don't know. I saw them on YouTube or whatever. They totally get promoted. And I think that, overall, I think on many things they do a pretty good job. And it's better than a lot of the mainstream, but that's a really low bar.
Yeah.
But it's got to be nice to be in that position where you get that much promotion from the powers that be. And but definitely like this $2,000 or the stimulus stuff. I don't know about you, but like, I don't know who can live on that. Like, what have we got in a year? It's been a year, right? What do we got? The 1,400 plus the $2,000. What do we got? What's it? 2,400 for a year?
2,600, isn't it?
2,600?
Yeah.
In over a year. So what's that?
2,400, I think.
Yeah, 200 and change a month. I don't,
They owe us a
know,
lot more. That's the bare minimum. And then
like does that cover internet and I don't know, gas?
Our water bill, like
does it cover the yeah. And like then I look at my trash bill, I'm like, oh.
Guys, we have supposedly progressives, like the people that are supposed to be fighting for us, who are in Congress, that are making excuses for Biden, like Bernie Sanders, who's like, oh yeah, and then who's like, yeah, Biden is being as progressive as he can. He's a new FDR, making excuses for him, voting for his war criminal administration. Jayapal says she's giving him an A. There's no pushback. And this is why I tell people that we got to stop relying on these politicians. It's not obvious to people anymore. Like, it's not obvious to as many people as it should be. Because like I was saying, just like in mainstream media, not giving the negative coverage that Biden deserves, there's people in independent media that are also not giving Biden the negative coverage that he deserves. They're not talking about these important issues also that also has to do with censorship, which is the Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and censoring channels that threaten that from happening, threatening channels that are independent, that expose corruption, that expose mainstream media narratives, like things in our foreign policy, like the COVID narrative. Those are the first channels that get targeted and get taken down, like The Last American Vagabond and Derek Bros, The Conscious Resistance. All of that is happening under the Biden administration, and there's little pushback. There's more channels now that have been demonetized, taken off of YouTube, getting their videos taken down. And I don't know about you guys, but I've seen my videos are getting suppressed a lot. Like, it makes no sense to me how I'm barely growing in subscriber count, and like my views are getting just as many views as I would have gotten like months ago when I had less subscribers. Have you guys noticed that too?
Well, I'll give you one quick story with something that happened on my channel. Now, as far as I know, as far as making a specific video debunking something, I made a video about the Charlottesville fine people on both sides hoax, if you will. I did that in, I think, April of 2019. And as far as I know, now I can't tell because they suppressed all those videos, but I think I was about the first person to put out a video on that topic, about Trump saying, I'm not talking about the bad people, right? And I did that video and I played the whole thing, and I put the text on the screen, and my channel was growing like this up until that week. And then it just went like, it just went sideways for the next 2 years, 2.5, Now, maybe it's a coincidence, but what was really interesting is you can search for that video by name on Google. You can put the exact title in the search bar with quotes around it, and it doesn't show up in Google, which owns YouTube. But it's the number one result in Bing. It's the number one result in DuckDuckGo. So I'm pretty sure that I do relate to having my channel suppressed. I think I can make the case that that is happening. And it's like I made my favorite thumbnail ever was I had a Biden. I had him when he was carrying something, and I made it into a Louis Vuitton bag with money falling out of it, for a Ukraine deal, which was way before Trump was impeached and way before, with that. And it was the exact same thing. You searched for the exact title. It's number one on Bing, number one on DuckDuckGo, does not exist on Google. You cannot find it on YouTube if you search for it. You can go to my channel and you can find it, but not on Google. Doesn't exist.
That's another thing, that the Ukraine story was getting suppressed. Like when there's no mainstream coverage on Joe Biden's son and his connection with the Ukrainian oil company, and all these pictures that leaked. Also, like him, I don't know if you guys saw this, like him standing with
I saw them all.
His 14-year-old niece, all that was getting censored from mainstream media before he was even president. How is that fair? It's manufacturing people's consent into thinking that, oh, Joe Biden, like, look at him, like he's the guy that's going to make things better from this disastrous joke that is Donald Trump. And yeah, he was a joke, but I mean, let's be fair, so is Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And yeah, like where is that negative coverage that we need to keep people in reality and not in this illusion that things have gotten better under him?
The big thing with why channels like this are getting suppressed is we would never make it to TV in the first place, because the stuff we talk about is stuff that bucks what the mainstream media wants to promote too much. And as some have said in the past, that a lot of them take the tactic of, if it bleeds, it leads, almost, right? It's not about informing a society. It's about, just like most other television shows at this point, it's about viewership, ratings, and getting as many views as possible to please the sponsors. And that's a massive problem. I look at it like this. They have to promote why you have to have the vaccines and stuff. I know that's kind of lead into another segment you got here, but they have to make people afraid of the pandemic, because otherwise, how do you buy into the rest of the stuff? Mm-hmm. If anyone gives this pushback to the Charlottesville situation, to what happened on January 6th, to anything with the Black Lives Matter protests, if you're covering these topics that they're using to promote a fear or trigger emotional responses from the people to accomplish certain goals, if you push back on that and people start finding that pushback and they're like, you know what, that makes kind of sense. Maybe we shouldn't be so upset, or maybe we should be more upset at some of these things. If you're doing that, you're screwing with their plan. Okay, I don't want to sound too Alex Jonesy here, but that's their goal. They don't want people to think. They don't want people to unify. They want to tell everyone what they're supposed to think and keep you divided. That's how they keep their power. And so if you're doing anything that threatens that, if you're doing anything to threaten that big old club, as George Carlin described it, you got to be shut up. Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't have made it to TV in the first place. So now that you've got a social media platform, they then have to silence you, because there's no way they want you reaching thousands and thousands to millions of people with this kind of message, because that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah. They see you as a threat. They see all of us in independent media as a threat.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's upsetting to see when some of our colleagues in independent media support censorship, support channels to be taken down. But a lot of them aren't even truly independent. Like the TYT group, Majority Report, and their MSNBC contracts.
Well, and I got news for you, Franco. At one point in time, TYT was a little more fair. I don't know if I ever would say they were great, in my opinion.
They were still wrong on some stuff, but
more toward progressive ideas, and at least more fair. But here's what's going to happen. If me or you or Tom or whoever, if we get to that size, if we ever reach, say Jimmy Dore levels one of these days, if by some chance it happens, you and me both know there's going to be offers coming out of the woodwork. They're going to try and buy you off, just like they did TYT. Because at that point, we need to corrupt you into promoting our message, because you've built thousands of people. And if we buy you off to the point you'll start BSing them, you might just swing a few of those people over to continue to buy into the BS some way or another. they're going to try and buy you off. Now the question just becomes whether anyone's going to take that money or not, take that bribery basically. But if we ever grew that big, you know it would be coming our way too, and that's why it happened to TYT.
Yeah. Tom, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with that?
Well, I'm ready to be bought off. There's contact on my channel. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm ready to switch. I am. Last summer, I think I officially, after I voted for Tulsi, I officially left the Democratic Party. I became a registered non. I forget what the term is here in Oregon.
Non-affiliated.
Non-affiliated. Yeah. But I'm ready. I mean, if someone wants me to do some libertarian content or Republican, I'll become a conservative Christian, whatever, hit me up.
Oh gosh, guys, you don't even know. Like, I got to meet Garland Nixon. It was an honor meeting him during the Clovers for Assange protest. He stopped by the place that some of the Action for Assange people were staying at. And he was telling us stories of the mainstream news, how it operates. Like, there's people there that are just like, yeah, I mean, I don't agree with any of this stuff, but I mean, they pay me and I cover it. Like, they give me the script and I just read it. And then, yeah. I mean, I don't agree with it, but hey, it's paying my bills and I get all these luxuries. And then, like, there's people, Garland was saying that there was this, when he was at Fox News, and they had Garland there to play as like the left wing person that like debates people on there. There was somebody that was about to go on air, is going to debate somebody. I forgot what the issue was, and Garland said something and completely destroyed their logic of what they're about to say. And then they were like, "Oh man, you're right. Well, good thing I'm not debating you." And then they just go on there and then just give their talking points. But that's just how it is. A lot of these people that work in CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they don't actually agree with everything or believe in this stuff that they're saying on camera, but they're happy with just repeating shit. They think more. Funnily enough, they think more critically than some of the viewers of these channels. It's really sad.
Well, I got to tell you something. So when I started my channel, like 3.5 years ago, when I started it, it was not necessarily going to be a political channel. I did not think the same way that I think today. I wanted to make a YouTube channel, and I just wanted to just get out some thoughts and, like, I think this is interesting. And there was a process that when I started looking into stories and I started researching, I really realized, like, oh, wait a minute, I know about this. How come they're reporting this differently? Oh, this is a topic I really understand. How come they're saying this wrong? I honestly went, like I say, 40 something years of my life without knowing how BS the media was, because I didn't really follow it. I wasn't really that into it. I didn't follow it that closely. And it wasn't until I started my channel that I started just like looking into stuff. And then I realized what it was. And so I think it's important to remember that we're all on different timelines on when we get it, and like, as an example, I went and saw Bernie when he ran the first time. And there were some things that I saw that I was just like, oh man, he just doesn't have it. He just doesn't have it. But there were a lot of people that I knew that were really into him. And so I just let him do that, and because they were just on a little bit different timeline than me, and I was definitely on a different timeline. I was told stuff like about the Clintons, I remember, like in the 90s. And I'm like, whatever, they seem cool. Hillary seems fine. But I looked into it, not even this much, and that's the thing, is we're all, you got to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think that we can really beat up people too much. We need to invite them and, just be welcoming them with new information and a different point of view, and hopefully they'll come around. to it, and that's okay, and not everybody's there yet, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's one thing I tell my viewers is be patient with some people because they're at a different point in their political journey. And you, at one point you were there. So just imagine, like, remember like how long ago it was when you were probably still like an Obama supporter or a George Bush supporter or a Clinton supporter. Like everybody is on their different, at a different point in their journey, and maybe one day they'll reach the point where you're at, or maybe at one point they'll surpass you.
Hope so.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, I don't know if you guys saw this clip of Joe Rogan on his show. He had, I think it was it Dave Smith that he had on, Charles?
Yeah, Dave Smith.
Yeah,
I think so,
and
yeah.
Tom. Yeah,
Legion of Skanks. He's great.
They were talking about the vaccine, and they were expressing their skepticism, information that they've heard. If you don't know what my position is on vaccines, check out my Rockfin. I have a bunch of videos there. We're not gonna get into like, oh, like it's right or it's wrong. We're not gonna talk about that here today. But you can already imagine what stance I would take if you're familiar with those videos. But we're gonna talk about people that want Joe Rogan censored, and Nomiki Kans is one of those people that was like, how irresponsible of him. I'm gonna play the clip here for people like when I cut this segment up. She's like, how irresponsible of him. He is a reporter and he's giving people misinformation. He should be taken off of YouTube. He should be taken off of Spotify. Here's the thing, guys. Even if he's wrong, and again, if you're familiar with my position, I don't think he was wrong. I think that it's important for people to be skeptical about what the mainstream media is pushing out. Even if he was wrong, he shouldn't be deplatformed for that. He shouldn't be censored. His video shouldn't be removed. The solution to whatever misinformation you think is out there is more speech, more information out there. We need to push out more information. When you deplatform people, when you censor them, then that creates more skepticism. People are like, oh, they're probably censoring him because he must have been telling the truth, and the government doesn't want the truth getting out. But yeah, go ahead and share your thoughts on that, and I'm gonna reveal some stuff about Nomiki that I've discussed before, but it's important for people to remember this about Nomiki. But yeah, go ahead. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I would just say what happened to having opinions? You know what I mean? First of all, if she said that Joe Rogan is a reporter, are you serious? I don't think of Joe Rogan being Walter Cronkite. Okay, Joe Rogan is a guy who just enjoys having conversations with people. Not even every podcast he has is even necessarily anything about per se news and politics. Okay, he also does, I don't know if you've ever saw him here, but UFC commentary. So he has a lot of UFC and mixed martial arts people on his show, and they talk about martial arts, and he brings on people like Joey Diaz, and they watch Bruce Lee movies. Okay, like this isn't a news show. And he talks to people. He talks to people on the right. He talks to people on the left. He talks to people who are libertarian. He's talked to people who are more green. I mean, he just talks, and he has his opinion. And that doesn't mean his opinion is right. It doesn't mean his opinion is wrong. He's just stating what he thinks. And if we're going to get to the point where everyone has to think what I think, or you have to be silenced, shut up, and not allowed to speak, that is a very scary picture that you quickly could lead you down the road of things such as, the 1930s Germany or things of that nature. What gets you to that point where at some point people could possibly even wind up in jail for saying the wrong things? That's the kind of thinking that leads you to that point in society. And that's absolutely dangerous. If this continues, if this kind of politically correct stuff continues, you might as well go ahead and kiss whatever freedom you think you've got in America goodbye, because you're not going to be living in America anymore. Like there will be no freedom for dissension at all. The First Amendment wasn't there to protect popular speech, because who has a problem with it? It's there to protect unpopular speech. And so if you don't think Joe Rogan's stance is right, kill him with kindness. Show him why your stance is correct. And I got news for you. Joe Rogan would probably listen to you. He's just that kind of guy. You know, he's had his opinion changed on things multiple times. So if you've got the right argument and you were to make that to Joe Rogan, his very next podcast, he might say, hey, yeah, all these people should go get vaccinated. If you've got a strong enough argument you can make to him.
What are your thoughts, Tom?
Yeah, let anybody talk and make fun of them. You know, that's what it used to be, and I thought it was pretty effective. You know, even if we think of the was it the Westboro Baptist Church, right? They would show up with their obnoxious signs that they would hold, you know, God hates and, you know, whatever at different things, and they would get a bunch of people to show up and yell at them and laugh at them and point at them and make fun of them.
Yeah.
And I think that, honestly, I think the best response to bad ideas is to laugh at it.
Yeah.
Because that's soul crushing. If you're out there saying something and you got people laughing at you like you're an idiot, I don't know of anything more effective. If you want to be effective, that's the way to do it, in my opinion. I think if you're pro-censorship because your ideas don't hold up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you need help.
Right.
You know, and it's like being in a game and you got to change the rules and you got to, you know, because you can't win by yourself. If you can win on your argument, win on your argument. And I wish we would get back to mocking people. I miss those days. I think that was a lot of fun. I mean, I was on the other side of it, you know, all through high school. But it, you know, it toughened me up, and you know, I may have had some opinions that weren't quite right. And, you know, you get mocked for it and you examine it and you change. That's how people grow.
Yeah.
But if you censor people, I just don't think it's effective. I don't think it's a good method for changing anyone's mind.
And
no matter what
we're mocking Nomiki Cons.
Yeah, and I would say too, the whole thing with the censorship, it's like Franco pointed out. If you censor them, there's this curiosity in society where we always want to know, like, the unknown. Like let's just be honest, especially in young people. Okay, when you were a teenager, and teenagers go through their rebellious phase, and society says don't do this, this, and this. The teenagers who got you know their youth and they're living a little more on the wild side. Not everyone, but you know, especially when you get to college and things like that. Society says don't smoke pot. I'm curious about smoking pot. Okay, society says I shouldn't smoke cigarettes. Wonder what they're like. Okay. I mean, it's that kind of thing. There's that edge to it. So when society says, don't listen to this person because they're a conspiracy theorist or whatever. And then I'm like, so why don't they want me to listen to them? Let me check them out and just see, you know, there's always that edge to it. I mean, you go all the way back through time. Don't watch Elvis. He's perverted on TV. Everyone watched him. You know, it's a societal thing. So, yeah, when you censor them, I'm completely with Tom. You need help because your argument isn't winning in a clear debate. So we got to rig the rules here so that you can't even speak. Okay. But when you do that, there's going to be that element of society, if they ever stumbled across you, that want to hear what you got to say, because all the parents are basically saying, no, you can't, no, you don't need to listen to those people. They're bad for you.
And an argument that she was making in that clip is saying, oh, leave it to the experts to talk about it. And that's a similar argument to what she said about Jimmy Dore when she was against forced to vote. She was saying, Jimmy's not an expert. He's not a professional political strategist. So he shouldn't be talking about it. Oh, if that's the case, then if we should just leave everything up to the experts to talk about these issues, and you shouldn't be saying Joe Rogan is wrong either because you're not an expert, right? How do you know what you're talking about, Nomiki? You're not an expert. You're not a scientist. You're not a virologist. You're not a doctor. You're not a public health doctor. And what about the experts that are saying the same thing or expressing the same skepticism as Joe Rogan? Because there are those doctors. There are those virologists. A lot of them are getting suppressed. What about them? They're experts, aren't they? It's like you guys say, like she may not be confident in her arguments, but at the end of the day, she's being authoritarian, and it's consistent with who she is. Like her thinking she knows better. Let me pull this up for everybody. This was Nomiki about on her stance on Libya, like when we installed regime change there, when the U.S. intervened. She said, when I was in Libya working with organizers, they all were so grateful that NATO intervened, helping their revolution from Gaddafi. And after Gaddafi was removed, things got worse. There was an open slave market there in Libya. 100% of the time when the U.S. intervenes into a country after World War II, things end up worse.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, she participated there as if she knows better than these black and brown women in the global South. Let me play this clip for people that was covered by Dan Cohen in his YouTube channel, his YouTube show called Behind the Scenes. All right, and then you guys will hear the audio, Tom and Charles. I'm about to play it. Let me just adjust it real quick. Hang on just a sec. My computer does something weird. I take my headphones off, and then I have to go to the settings on my computer to adjust it so that it's in speaker mode. It doesn't automatically change back to speaker mode. All right. Here we go.
Participant in NATO's criminal destruction of Libya. That's right, self-described leftist Nomiki Khan spent time training the Islamist opposition in Libya after the NATO intervention that deposed Muammar Gaddafi and saw him murdered in the streets by jihadist proxies after drones attacked his motorcade. Khan's traveled to Libya thanks to the National Democratic Institute, one of the subsidiaries of the very same CIA cutout, the National Endowment for Democracy, that funds Bellingcat. The National Democratic Institute was directed at the time by Madeleine Albright, a militaristic former Secretary of State who famously stated that she was perfectly fine with being responsible for killing 500,000 Iraqi children.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
When I called out Khan's U.S. government-sponsored regime change vacation on Twitter, she doubled down on her slander, demanding to know if I'd also lined my pockets with Bashar bucks. Full disclosure, I have never received money from Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian government, or any of its functionaries, and I don't know how getting Syrian government money would even be possible, given the U.S. sanctions that make such an act a criminal offense. But I did receive the same award that Jimmy Dore and many other anti-war journalists have received from the non-profit group she referenced, and which, once again, is not part of the Syrian government in any way.
So that's the thing about people in that crowd, in the TYT crowd and the Majority Report crowd. Like Nomiki is part of that crowd. All of them got exposed during the Force to Vote events that happened earlier in the year around January. Anna Kasparian, who was spreading propaganda for NATO, like all of that was like that information was already out there. People like Ben Norton and Max Blumenthal had already talked about this stuff on their channel, the Moderate Rebels. Dan Cohen, like he knew about this stuff already. All this stuff was already documented. It's just that it got exposed more to people. It got to reveal more about the authoritarian nature of people like that are in TYT, or some of them who used to be a part of TYT but still collaborate with them. and the Brooklyn Left, which includes Majority Report. But yeah, go ahead, guys. What are your thoughts? Let me adjust my audio first, and I'll let you guys know when it's set.
Well, I mean, I'll just say this. Her comment about leave it to the experts is for anyone who wants to be a reporter, that is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard. Okay, I mean, pardon my language here, but I mean that's absolutely batshit fucking crazy. Okay, if we're going off of that, then I guess as far as how many foreign wars we should be in, we should leave it to the experts.
Yeah.
Because they all said there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and they were so fucking correct about that. Okay. So if we're going to leave it to the experts, then I guess the only people who should be reporting on war are people who work for the Pentagon or the military or the CIA. If we're going to talk about sports, then no one should be discussing sports except for, people who are former players of the sport, former athletes of that sport should be the only ones talking about the sports. If we're talking about politics, the only people who should be able to discuss that are politicians, because who knows politics better than a politician? So,
or all these political scientists hacks
on anything unless you've done it yourself.
Makes no sense. Like people can't develop their own critical thinking skills.
Right. And again, that's the whole premise of conversation. I know how to work on cars a little bit, and I've learned a lot, but I would probably feel okay talking about cars with a mechanic. You know why? Because I've learned a little bit, but I still don't know how to rebuild an entire engine or a transmission or anything like that. But you know what? Am I less qualified? How do I learn more about the subject? You've got to be able to exchange ideas. That the fool in the room, the one who doesn't know what he's talking about, should be able to talk about the subject, because he might come across someone who does, and they might be able to teach him a thing or two. That's how you learn. I mean, it's conversation. To me, it just shows more of trying to shut down dialogue. And if you have less dialogue, you've got more stupid people, in my opinion.
Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, the appeal to authority thing is just ridiculous. Anybody that is been following my channel for a long time knows that I have a fancy microphone right here, and this makes me an expert, because I wouldn't be an expert if I didn't have this fancy microphone. So if you got a fancy microphone, you're an expert, and that's my rule. So and that's what I use to be able to then talk about anything I want to. I do want to do one thing, though. I do want to shout out the chat. You've got a great chat, Frank.
Oh, they're very smart. I love them. I learned so much from them.
They're fantastic. And I do have to say that that's one of the best things that I never thought when I started a YouTube channel, that one of the greatest things would be the feedback that I would get from people all over the world. Means a whole lot. So just a shout out to the chat. But yeah, her argument is insane. I have a hard time. I can't watch her show. I kind of have a sensitive ears, and I don't want to ad homer about how she sounds, but it's too much. It's too high for me, and I just have a hard time watching it. So I'm not, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, anyone can sound however they want to sound, but this whole idea that we're not human beings and we can't think for ourselves and we can't form opinions, that we need to just bow down to authorities and listen to that. That's just a manipulation technique, and I don't buy it. Mm-hmm. So that's my take.
I don't buy it either. And another thing, anybody can learn and become just as smart as any expert on a material if they put in the work to study the material. Enough. We see the Convo Couch becoming really informed on election integrity issues, on how the election system works. We see all the time in biology. There could be people that get their degree in molecular biology, but then they focus their research more on like cancer biology or virology. We see people that get their PhD on ecology, and then they go on to focus more on molecular biology, like because then they bring stuff from outside in the environment. They bring it into a lab because that's the job that they got accepted for, and then they really needed somebody who could help out in the lab as well, a molecular ecologist lab, and then they run some PCR tests or whatever, or other molecular biological tests, and then eventually they can become a molecular biologist or molecular biologist expert. And that's why I see people who discredit some scientists that later on in their life became virologists or really informed about a certain field in biology being discredited just because they got their PhD in another field of biology. That happens all the time in biology. It's the norm. Well, it's not the norm, but a lot of people, you see that a lot. Like, I've worked for a professor who got his PhD in in biochemistry, but he was doing research on stuff out in the field for ecology. Like, this stuff happens all the time. So yeah, that's what I want to say. Like, anybody can become really informed about something, and they might even see some pieces of information or other things that the experts aren't seeing, and they're able to point it out to them. And sometimes the experts are like, "Oh shit, yeah, I didn't notice that. Thanks for pointing that out."
Yeah.
I just wanted to point to say that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. It's, how does anyone become an expert in the first place? They had to learn somewhere, right? So I mean, to say leave it to the experts. I mean, who's to say? I mean, I don't see this happening, but it's always possible. Who's to say that Jimmy Dore doesn't become the expert on healthcare one of these days because of how it has impacted him? There, that's how people become experts, are through learning the data, learning the material that's out there, and having conversation. Okay. You've got to go back and forth, because you can read what anyone's written. You can read all that stuff, but then there will be someone who is out there that you haven't found, and then say you sit down and you talk to them one day, and then say they make 3 good points that the book never really touched on and you never thought about. That's how you become smarter. And so to advocate the opposite of that, you're advocating to keep the IQ in the room down, in my opinion.
Tom, what are your thoughts? My bad. I didn't know you finished.
Yeah, I was just going to say, let me throw one more thing on there. Just because Joe Rogan doesn't share your opinion doesn't mean he has no valid point in anything he's saying. You know what I mean? For example, I know his comment was on 21-year-olds specifically. Let's be honest. Is there something statistically wrong with saying that the average 21-year-old person has a better chance of recovery in any sort of disease like this than elderly people? Elderly people, naturally, their bodies are older. They're more worn down. Their hearts are going to be in worse shape. Their lungs are going to be in worse shape. I mean, it's just like anything. The more wear it has, the harder things like that are. If you've driven a car 190,000 miles, when you go through a pothole, it's going to be worse on the suspension than if it was brand new. Okay, so if you're younger, you do have a more likely chance of just beating it and pulling through it than an elderly person. I mean, that's just a fact. So doesn't mean they should or shouldn't take it, but again, to say he should be deplatformed just because he didn't agree with your opinion doesn't mean everything he said is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, the answer to, speech you don't like is more speech, right? Mm-hmm. That's the answer. And quashing it's not going to work. And I don't think it's effective either.
No.
And when we think about people that really make a difference, it's not always the expert. The expert doesn't, like, people come up with grand ideas. They might not even be in that field. We should be open to that. We should be open to, things, and we can go, okay, this guy's not an expert, but what does he say on it? And then you can listen to it and judge and go, okay, well, I don't know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And that's fine. That's okay. That's one of the great things about being a human, about being alive in 2021 is, you can share your opinion and get told you're an idiot or, but the solution of just quashing people, of just shutting down people that you don't agree with or that may have something dangerous to say, I just don't think it works in the long run, and I don't think it's very persuasive. So,
well said. Yeah. Let me just read some of these comments, and I want to remind people the best way you can support me is Rockfin. There's other ways you can support me that are listed in the description here. And please support Charles and Tom Coffee here as well. I have their channels linked, and you guys can subscribe to them. They're gonna have ways that you can support them. So Gamer for Life 07 says, I agree on that. Younger, healthy people don't need the vax. I'm 20. Josh Davis, I'm 23 and work out every day. I don't think I'm gonna get the vax. Ozalissa says, I agree with Joe, but the assumption is that the vax prevents infection. Agent 99, right? And I doubt people are really basing their decision on getting the shot on Rogan, and that's not to diss him. Yeah, I don't think people are gonna change their mind just from hearing what Joe Rogan has to say. So let's look over at Rockfin here. Climate Rebel says that's why recycle bins are for. Then says Joe Rogan is a shock jock. Fred Edwards said 18K private contractors are in Afghanistan now, 2,500 military. And he also said Joe is worse than Trump. It ain't complicated. So yeah, guys, you have anything to respond to any of those, or you guys want to give a final message to everybody? I'm glad I had you guys on. I had a blast.
Yeah, I was gonna say I got to wrap because I got to run at 10 to go into work the third shift tonight. But that being said, I don't think people are basing their health information off of what Joe Rogan has saying, and that was my point. I mean, he's having a conversation, and that's what I brought up earlier. Joe Rogan is in a medical podcast. He's not just a political podcast. He talks about all kinds of stuff. People are just listening to it for the conversation. You know what I mean? There have been cases where Joe Rogan is on there just talking about Bigfoot and all these conspiracy theories with Alex Jones and whatnot. I wouldn't want to listen to that. Like if I caught cancer, I don't think that you can't catch cancer, but if I developed it, I wouldn't tune into the Joe Rogan Experience to find out what the best treatment options are. Like, are you serious? It's a conversation. If you want to know, I would be trying to find a source, not just, a comedian / UFC commentator's opinion on the matter. I mean, that doesn't mean he shouldn't be able to have one, but I'm not going to just take his word for it and say, well, that made my mind up. But yeah, definitely, check me out, Lone Wolf Podcast. You can find me again over on Twitter, Vigilant into P1, and the channel is on YouTube, Daily Motion, Odyssey, and Rumble.
All right, Top Coffee.
Sweet. Yeah. Man, we're all agreeing with each other on everything. What kind of echo chamber is this? This is not a good thing. We all agree on everything, Anyway, yeah, my channel's called Coffee and Nuance. I think you'll like it. I think it's one of the best ones on the planet. That's my opinion, and I'm an expert, so there you go. But yeah, no, this was great. I don't think a whole lot of people are getting their medical advice from Joe Rogan either. But one thing that Joe Rogan does have going for him is he has different points of view on. He listens to it. He evaluates what they say, and then he makes the best decision he can at the time with the information that he has. And I think that that's a valuable thing to do. That's a great example for everyone. If everyone would do that, just be more open, listen to different points of view, evaluate it for yourself and make the best decision you can with what you know so far in life. And I think if you do that, I think you're going to make the right decision more often than not. So that's really good. To the one commenter that was talking about the private people in Afghanistan, the private contractors in Afghanistan, yeah, that's totally a thing. I can see them just moving this to a black budget kind of thing, and we can have tens of thousands of private contractors over in Afghanistan and just keep this thing rolling for decades. It's wrong. I think it's totally wrong, but I kind of think that's what's going to happen. But anyway, yeah, Franco, thanks for having me on, man. This was rad, and your commenters are all fantastic. And check out my channel. That's it. I look forward to doing this again.
I look forward to having you guys both on again soon. Definitely subscribe to the Lone Wolf Podcast and Coffee and Nuance. And if you have not yet subscribed to Frank Analysis, I don't know what you're waiting for. Subscribe. You can find me on other platforms like Rockfin and Odyssey. And yeah, guys, take care. Stay informed.